Hi everyone, Chris Cavalier here. As you're all aware, I've been recently doing 2 weeks of a high frequency bench press block where I've been benching twice a day, trying to follow a similar format to the Yasuda study where they did something very similar over 2 weeks. The results, as I promised you all, what I want to do here is just make a slight comparison of the group of athletes that he used versus myself, just to really highlight when we read a study that really need to take into consideration the differences in the cohort of athletes that you train. So for example, in the Yasuda study, they used 10 young men, 172 centimeters at 66 kilos of body weight. Myself, I'm about 185 on a good day and I weigh 105 kilos. Their bench press 1RM was a mean of 58 kilos, maximum of 66. Whereas my bench press 1RM, although a little old, is 194 kilos. Perhaps in reflection, I should have done a current 1RM to reset my 30%. Therefore, my training load used during my study was 60 kilos versus around 17 kilos for the Yasuda study. Although I should have got a current 1RM before this little training block to highlight my changes, I did recently complete a French contrast block where I was able to get high load liftings, in this case an isometric bench press, where I was able to push 1,860 newtons, and I had a lot of velocity data around the 100 kilo mark. So therefore I used the velocity data, the submax velocity data when I bench pressed 194 kilos, because that actually accurately predicted my 1RM through extrapolation. And I was also able to use the isometric bench press data and the velocity data from my French contrast session to really give you a good idea of the improvements. As I said, the results, I did get small gains in size. My arms relaxed. I was able to put on 0.7 of a centimeter, 1.7%, and flexed. I was able to put on 0.8 of a centimeter, so that's 1.9%. My chest improved 3.6 centimeters from 112.4 to 116, so 3.2%. Not huge gains, however, I probably wouldn't expect to get big arm gains because I wasn't doing arms specifically. However, the chest pretty much was spot on, I thought, because I was doing a lot of bench pressing. In the study from Yasuda, they had bench press improvements of their 1RM of 6%. When you look at my results, all my submax data went through the roof. If I look in comparison, the heaviest I benched during this block was doing doubles on 140 with the cuffs on. For example, 100 kilos is probably my best measure. My previous personal best over 18 months of data was 0.89 meters per second, and I was able to achieve 0.97 meters per second, so a 9% improvement. Everything from 80 to 140 kilos went through the roof. However, my isometric bench didn't improve at all. It went from 1,860 down to 1,769, so a decrease of 9.7%. Push-ups, we had problems with our force plate, so I wasn't able to get that kind of data. Therefore, I put on a little bit of size. My submax data went up. However, my top end didn't improve. And I really think that's a reflection of my training age. A lot more extensive. And as literature says, you need to lift heavy if in an athletic population, although I'm no longer a competing athlete. Other thoughts of this type of session, it was a little tiring, to be honest. Adding the 2 extra heavy lifts throughout the block. When it came to the testing week, my body was actually quite tired. However, I just persevered and tried to get through because I thought I needed to get this data out. Once again, the difference between the low and the high training age. The Yasuda study had a low training age, but it goes to show that athletes need to lift heavy loads, as I said earlier. However, I still feel if you are a well-established athlete, you need to lift really heavy loads, and perhaps my heavier sessions should have been without BFR, and I should have tried to go for loads more around 90%, or even do some plus 100% work using partial ranges and so forth. If I had my time again, as I said, my heavy load days would be without the BFR, and I'd make sure that I had heavier loads lifted during these sessions. And possibly also less frequency. If you're a younger athlete or a low training age, you can get by with lifting low loads, whereas you've been training for 10, or in my case 20 years, you probably actually need a little bit more rest. Thought also things like I perhaps should have paid a little bit more attention to some soft tissue work. Had a bit more of a stretch and a roll, because I really found by the end of it I was quite tight through my chest, triceps, biceps, and also forearms, so a little bit of work there. However, it was really great for my low load lifting, and it went through the roof. And where we look at when we're actually competing out there, am I trying to bench press 200 kilos, or am I trying to move 140 kilos a little bit faster? So that's really a question that comes down to the philosophy of the strength coach, but also the sporting needs of the athletes. It's actually intrigued me to perhaps have another go at a slightly modified periodization of this, to see if I use a little bit less frequency of BFR and use those sessions without the cuffs on my heavier days and some partial works, if I'm actually able to improve my 1RM. So if you are interested in seeing a slight modification of this periodization to see what I can achieve, maybe in a slightly longer block over 4 weeks, because I think that's perhaps a little bit more realistic in an older athlete like myself, please let me know, because we're really intrigued to see if you are interested. But I think if you have an athlete on a low training age, they perhaps don't need to do twice daily sessions of BFR, but it's a really good way. 10 minutes, you're done. It's very quick. If you have the equipment handy, it's quite easy to do. And I actually felt quite good doing it. So it wasn't a chore at all. The sessions I got in, I actually felt quite good during the day, and I actually looked forward to it at night time. Just at the end of the 2 weeks, I was just a little bit tired, as you can imagine. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave some comments and what your thoughts are, and I look forward to hearing what you'd like to see in my next training block. Bye for now. Keep the pump.